It's hard to be a graduate fellow because say that you're a student and this is part of your fellowship and you shouldn't look at it like employment, but in so many ways it is employment.
Being a student and a fellow at the same time is incredibly challenging. And in comparison, most of the time, a professional life could even be described as easier than being a full-time student and a fellow.
We're expected to do so much for so little.
We are constantly reminded that we're students. However, we get treated as professional staff when they want to, and then treated as a student when we want to be treated as professional staff.
Sometimes we do so much work that I forget that I'm a student.
I just am exhausted by this work and I'm only 23. So
I no longer see the boundary between me being a graduate student and me just being an employee at the school. And I think sometimes the college forgets that too.
It's just frustrating when you're trying to do your best and you're giving everything that you give, but you don't get the adequate support from the people that you're working with or from the professors, really, because I feel like they understand what's going on. They know our plight. And instead of actually working to change the things that we face or to make our experiences better, they just put a Band-Aid over our feelings and just tell us they understand it's hard and just be strong. So that's what makes it frustrating, is because we're just expected to struggle, and the struggle is just a part of the game and you just have to deal with it.
I applied for a fellowship because it just seemed like the right thing to do when I was an undergrad and I wanted to apply to a higher ed program. I was told that the fellowship program or assistantship program was the best way to go.
If I'm being honest, I thought that was the only way that grad school kind of worked. I didn't have a lot of information about it. Once I found out that it wasn't just a mandatory thing, I was still as interested as I was before, just because it was something that really could help me in my tuition.
So the reason why I applied to Merrimack for a fellowship is because, well, money, of course.
The money. It was definitely the money.
The main reason for starting to look into a fellowship was the tuition. I'm not a typical grad student or a typical fellow, but at this point in my career, does it make sense for me to spend all this money on a master's? I certainly don't need it. This is something I'm doing for personal reasons.
I was a graduate fellow here at Merrimack College when I was getting my master's in education. In order to fill out my resume, get myself some more recent work experience, and it didn't hurt that it could pay for my tuition, I applied with great interest to the fellowship positions.
So a typical day for me as a graduate fellow and a graduate student is as follows. I wake up in the morning.
So a typical day for me really starts pretty early. I wake up at about 6:30.
We start at 7:20. That's when the kids come in.
I drive to Merrimack College. I look around about maybe sometimes 10 minutes to find a parking spot on campus.
Come in my office around 8:30 a.m.
Eventually I find one.
You are actually quite lucky if you find a parking spot outside of the building where my office is.
Get here around 8 or 9 o'clock in the morning.
My day starts at 9:30.
I'll come in either Tuesday or Thursday from 10 to 2.
I may have to hold conduct meetings with people who broke policy violations.
I get my materials ready to go. The kids all have a due now that they complete, and they give me their homework. I like to have that routine set down. I like to check in with them, get my materials ready on the board, so when the lesson starts, we're ready to go.
I'll get right on the computer, sign in, log into my email, start reaching out to groups and whatnot, because a lot of my job is sales and trying to bring groups in for the games.
I also work with my commuter ambassadors to make sure that the lounge is running and that we have everything we need for our students. And then I usually make phone calls to students or just emails. And then at the end of the day, I usually have classes in the evening, so I'll be on campus until 9 or 7 p.m. most nights.
Yeah, that's basically a day for me. I mean, in between when I'm not napping or eating or at the gym, it's basically homework.
I spend a fair amount of time on homework and preparing for class. My classes are in the evenings, so, depending on the day, I may be here. Classes start at 6 and some of the classes end around 9.
So I'm pretty much in a classroom for 3 hours at night, plus about 6.5 hours in the morning, plus bowling practice, and then once class is over, I'm exhausted.
Thinking about being a fellow and a graduate student, what those two look like, it's definitely, I try my best to separate those two. So when I'm a fellow during the day, I'm just a fellow. I try really hard to stick as that. And then at night is when I'm a student and I focus on that. So I step away from my fellowship duties after 3 p.m. and focus on my student role.
Blending the two together, that can sometimes be a challenge. You know, you have to make sure that you're meeting deadlines for both your fellowship as well as your class programs.
When I do work the games, it's at night, and I like to do a lot of homework at night, and I obviously can't do both. I work, my boss is great with making sure I hit my hours and don't go over, so it's not really like I'm overstressed or getting pushed to the limit, but I'm not good with time management, and it doesn't combine well when I have a couple different games throughout the week and they're all at night, when I most likely would have planned to do homework, but that's just how it goes.
I am the dance team coach with part of my fellowship, so it's definitely hard having night practices but also night classes. So if we get out of class early one night, if our class is from like 6 to 8:30, I'm still stuck here until 10 o'clock practicing Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, which kind of stinks, but at the same time, I love what I do, so it kind of helps me have something fun to end my day. But even with like basketball games and stuff, I feel like I'm here more at nights than I am during the day.
You kind of forget that you're a student because you're so involved. And it's also frustrating because you're expected to put in so much effort, and when you have issues or problems arrive for you, you don't get the same effort that you are asked to produce. It makes you feel like a secondary citizen from both standpoints. On a pro staff level, you understand that you're just a graduate fellow, you're not a pro staff member. But on the student aspect, you don't get the same support that students get because you're technically a part of the professional staff.
The biggest challenge of being a graduate student and a fellow is navigating the two roles that you play on a daily basis. Your primary role ought to be that of a student because that is your main motivation for being part of the college community. Your secondary role should be as a fellow, performing roles similar to those of the professional staff. But those can get cloudy, murky. And in that murkiness, there can be creep into inappropriate levels of commitment to one versus the other. So the first priority should be a student, and the primary role should be as a student.
So the biggest challenge being a grad student and working in this fellowship is balancing between this in school along with my personal life. Recently, my family and I have kind of noticed that I haven't really been able to spend as much time with them as I'd like to. We really just want to spend any and all time that we have together before we really start getting even more busy. So we kind of created a plan on what we're going to do to kind of change that.
I think the biggest challenge has been separating myself when it comes to our responsibilities. I think especially last year, I often found that I was doing things that the paid staff should be doing. I was required to take a lot of time outside of my 25 hours, and it got to the point where I was struggling. I think that challenge has really made me be very strict about my time now. Like this year, I've been very strict about sticking to my hours, and thankfully I have an amazing supervisor who's been really good about helping me stick to that. I just can't imagine trying to do everything that I was doing last year this year because of how challenging it was managing that time.
Sometimes the workload, trying to find a parking space here at Merrimack, just, that whole staying here a couple nights pretty late and getting up early the next morning. The combination, there can be some weeks where you're just like, oh my gosh, I need a break. Call it burnout, call it exhaustion. I think all of us at different times feel that.
I think the burnout is a lot higher in grad school just because the program is 1 year, so it's a lot quicker and accelerated. My burnout just stems from constantly being on go, go, go. Also, in the teacher education program, we work the whole 40 hours as opposed to 25 hours like most fellowships do. So the workload for me is a little bit higher, which is definitely different from my last fellowship because it was half that time, so I had more time to do homework versus now where I have to just be a little bit more mindful of what I'm doing and when I'm doing it.
Do I experience burnout? You know, I think everybody does. It's just that not everybody admits it.
I am sitting right here burnt out right now.
I am experiencing burnout at this moment. I don't know what it would stem from. I guess I've never been a big person when it comes to school. It's kind of tough when I have a lot of friends who are not in college, who either never went or who are done now, and they're kind of off doing their own thing in their own lives, and I'm still the one in school. I'd say it's a mental thing more than anything.
You know, having so much to do, a lot of the times, as much as we want to say mental health and take care and sleeping and stuff like that, it's hard to get all of that in when you have all this coursework coming in.
Graduate students are infamous for experiencing burnout. That happens at institutions across the country, and it also happens at Merrimack. I experienced burnout when I was a graduate student. It often stems from a combination of time problems and imposter syndrome. So people are laboring under huge demands with very little time to spend on those demands, and they're burdened with this sense that they are not here for the right reasons and they are not good enough. And so the work that they're doing doesn't get imbued with the confidence it deserves. It is forced from them despite the fact that they feel like they are not good enough.
Every day there's an obstacle that we have to overcome. There's a problem that we have to fix, and there's a solution that we need to come up with. On top of the classwork that we have to do, and life in itself are like hard to manage, and it's hard to keep all your ducks in a row because there's so much going on. And it's one thing to recognize that you're burnt out so that you can work to fix it, but it's a different level of frustration when you realize you're burnt out and you're doing everything that you know how to do to combat the burnout, but it's still here. So it kind of makes you feel hopeless.
I also think that burnout just comes from like the way that I've had to deal with crisis here. So the whole time that I've been here, but especially during my first semester here, I lost a lot of family, and it was really, really taxing to be trying to deal with going back and forth home, right? But also trying to deal with like the reality that I had just lost my supervisor because he went to another institution and no one was there to help me. The director told the assistant director to step in as my supervisor, and I wasn't really feeling like I got the support that I needed. When I first lost my supervisor, I didn't feel like I was getting the support I needed, so it really made it really hard to do things because not only was I drained emotionally and mentally on my own in my personal life, but I was also really drained coming to work and knowing I had to do my 25-hour job plus my supervisor's 40-hour job because no one was replacing him for the immediate future. It was also really draining because I would come into staff meetings and I would be like, hey, like, I'm not mentally okay, and I'm just being told that I need to get the work done because no one else is here to do it, really, which sucks. It really sucks having that burden put on me, especially as someone that's unpaid, and it really caused me to resent the work that I was doing in a way that I've never wanted to do. I love Res Life, and it's the reason that I'm here. Like, I really enjoyed being an RA, and I think in the right environment, I could really love this job.
I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that I'm tackling two things, being a professional and being a student. I think managing both of those and getting all of the tasks that need to get done in a day. There's only 24 hours in a day. I wish there was 35, but there's not. And learning how to manage that has been pretty difficult. In undergrad, I had a job and I was in class, but it was different because I wasn't working from 9 to 3 and then doing class 5 to 10. I could have been doing work
work on the weekends or for a couple hours here, a couple hours there. So as a grad student, I think navigating those two things, my first 10 weeks were definitely the most difficult because I had taken a gap year. So from going from 1 year from doing no type of schoolwork to then being in an accelerated program was very difficult, and I think that's where I actually experienced the most burnout was at the beginning, because I was trying to figure out how to manage my time, how to get it done, how to get my motivation back, how to get my mind back into school mode after taking that one gap year.
It's a lot to be in grad school, especially the fellows who are working 25 hours a week or more, doing classes, and then obviously outside of your classes you have a lot of schoolwork to do. And I know some students are still trying to have like a part-time job on top of that. So I think that's where the burnout comes in, is when there's not enough hours in the day to kind of make everything work. And I also think that it's easy when you're in that mind frame to not stop and take care of yourself. So I notice a lot of graduate students don't make time to work out, or you're eating a bag of chips for lunch or something because you don't have time to eat, right? So I'm not sure exactly how to manage that unless you start actually scheduling time for yourself or time to take care of yourself.
All right, so if I was to assess my time management skills, I'd give myself a grade, and it'd be definitely a C- because I am terrible at it. I do assignments the day of. I just am bad at managing things out to get things done in time. I always like to think I'm gonna do it beforehand, and I just never do.
I would say my time management skills are pretty good. I rely very heavily on Google Calendar. If I didn't have it, I have no idea what I would do. I would always joke with my friends from the last program, if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't exist. So my Google Calendar has my whole schedule planned out from when I need to get to school to when I need to leave school. It also has tasks of what assignments I want to get done during the day. I just find the task tends to work better for those, just because I can, one, differentiate between fellowship responsibility and class responsibility, but two, I just love that feeling of checking off a box. And when I see it cross off, it makes me feel accomplished and that I'm getting stuff done.
It's just like about getting everything done, and I love checking off a good list and like crossing something out. That really makes my day.
I try to use an assignment notebook, and that goes as far as filling it out on the first day and never looking at it again. I think of new strategies like, if I do the readings that are due Monday on Thursday when I don't have much, then maybe I'll get ahead of the game, and then Thursday comes around and I'm at home doing my thing and I don't do a thing. I might even give myself a D+ thinking about it now, honestly.
I have this actually very handy to-do book right here, and I love just filling out all the things I need to do every day. I can plan my weeks out. That's another thing I do to help manage my time, is every Sunday I go into my agenda and I plan out my week and what I plan to do for those days. And that's been really helpful because of the fact that I don't have a lot of time during the week to do homework. I find in between times here and there to do something very small.
I also feel that for me, what best helps me succeed is talking to my professors and asking them about other, work that I have to do throughout the semester, and seeing if I can get it earlier so I can get a head start on it. That way, if I find trouble towards the end or when the assignment is closer to being done, I already have half of it done.
A challenge I face with time management is knowing to just leave work at work and not take that home with me. Even though I do try to get that done in the morning, I sometimes find myself thinking about things that I could have done and find myself taking away my student time to do my fellowship time. So I just knowing when to leave work at work and go home and focus on my schoolwork is a challenge that I've been working on.
There's times when I have it together where I'm a student first and I'm a fellow after. That's how I try to keep my mindset and keep my priorities. But sometimes the job as a fellow takes over and it's hard to focus on being a student. Primarily because all of our emails come to the same place. So if I'm in class looking for an email for class, I get an issue, my mind automatically thinks to go ahead and handle that issue, and then it's taken away from my class. Balance itself, it's difficult. It can be done, but it takes a lot of patience and work.
It's challenging, but I think it's also preparing you for the real world. So you're going to be busy. People may or may not have a family, so you're going to be working full time and doing other things on top of that in the real world. So I think it's challenging, but hopefully that challenge is also preparing students for that after leaving here.
If I'm being perfectly honest, the biggest benefit is the free tuition. You know, I can say that there were other benefits as well, working at the school, getting to know higher ed, what kind of work environment that is, and those are valuable. But the biggest thing for me, the biggest motivation really was free tuition.
And I know a lot of people will say, oh, well, money isn't everything, and it's not. But if you look at the numbers, it's extremely expensive. People love the fact that they are able to attend not only graduate school, but undergraduate college, and then they wonder why they're spending half of their life paying back all of this debt.
Besides tuition, I think the biggest benefit graduate students receive from fellowships are the experience. So the whole idea around fellowships, it's not only great for us because we get help here, and it's great for the students because you get a tuition discount or free tuition, but the students are getting jobs where you might not have necessarily been able to get jobs at. Being in a fellowship here or off campus even, those positions you necessarily wouldn't have gotten hired into. So a fellowship allows you to get that experience and then afterwards be able to get into an actual job that you might not have been able to get.
Overall, being a graduate fellow and a graduate student has really benefited me just from the point of I'm not exactly learning things, I'm more of becoming an expertise in the subject that I'm doing, but also being able to grow as a pre-professional and learn things about myself that I didn't know before, and making my new connections with different peers from a different level. I just feel like it's a fun experience and has given me a new perspective of college and how things work from the back end rather than seeing it all up front.
Biggest benefit I've received from this fellowship is the experience. Professionally, I've grown a lot. I can talk about a lot more things happening in education. I feel so much more confident about teaching the population that I work with. Everything is useful and it all connects rather than seeing everything as like one separate thing.
I'd just say the experience I've gained is the biggest benefit, honestly. I definitely have a lot to put on the resume after this.
I get to see office culture firsthand, get a front row seat to like how things go in the office, how to deal with office conflict and working with people you're different from. I feel like that is my most valuable takeaway from this experience, is to be able to watch people work and like learn tips from them.
I think the biggest benefit I've had is being able to work very closely with the Unity House as well as any students of color on campus. Being a student of color myself and coming from APWI, I know that I struggled a lot with finding not only my identity but my community on campus. And so the biggest benefit this year has been being able to help students identify their community on campus, where to get help, knowing that I will help tutoring students for math in Spanish.
I've become more connected on campus, seeing as how this is my first year and technically only year at Merrimack College. I had to learn the campus very fast. I had to learn the lay of the land very quickly. And I think the fellowship helped me connect with not only professors and the admin and the deans, but also with other students as well, and helping me to be on campus more so that way I can see more familiar faces, feel as though that I'm getting my money's worth being a grad student, so I'm getting the full, well, I'm on campus enough so it justifies why I'm here.
Being independent the way that I was that first semester on campus has really required me to have autonomy in a way that I don't think every new professional gets. So having my supervisor leave and kind of being left out to high and dry really required me to handle things on my own. And I think one thing I really recall hearing is that during that semester, I left one day for a funeral and I came back and they were like, we didn't realize how much that you do. And I'm like, no one's here, I have to do it by myself. So a big part of, this fellowship has been me figuring out how to make things happen for myself.
I think the biggest benefit of being a part of this program and being in grad school is it's given me the space to make mistakes. So I will always make mistakes. No one's ever going to be perfect, but this was the perfect time to make those bigger mistakes, to learn from them, keep moving, and take what I've learned into my work and in my reflection. Through reflection and writing down my thoughts and my decisions and my actions, it's really taught me how to look at things differently, not just in my work, but in my personal life, relationships, whether they be professional or a friendship. That's one of my biggest benefits, is really having the space to make mistakes and remind yourself, I am a student, I am a professional, but I'm also a student, and I have the room to make mistakes in this moment because that's why I'm here.
I would structure it better. There's a lot of times where we're asked to go with the flow, and that's all the instructions that we get. Or once we develop or we set our own structure up, we're asked to change and pivot because things are so temperamental in our office. There's no real stability or no real, anything for us to anchor on. So I would structure it differently so we know what we're doing and where to go so that everyone feels secure.
Something I would change about the fellowship is just the time that I have with my supervisor. It can be hard for me to find time to really talk to him. I know that there are a lot of different ways that I can reach out, but sometimes it does feel a little challenging to find him.
Yeah, I think more interaction as a whole throughout the entire third floor of this library would have been nice, working with FYE, working with Promise, working with Compass. So yeah, I work with the fellows in those areas, but that's more so because we're all in the same classes together, so we know what each of us do. So definitely more interaction and kind of closing it all together because we are one center at the end of the day.
One thing I would change about my fellowship is having the institution trust me with more responsibilities. Although I've learned so much, I could have learned even more if they had just trusted me to do the extra step, to do more, to be in more conversations, to sit in on different types of meetings that will enhance my education about how things are run at the institution.
There needs to be better parameters and expectations that are more consistent across the board with fellows on campus. So monitoring the sites a little bit better, making sure the sites that the students are getting a good experience, they're not being overworked, making sure there's consistency across campus with start dates and end dates and expectations on the fellows' part and on the site's part. So it's a lot, but a lot of that is what I'm working on right now to kind of hopefully have a better structure on all of it moving forward for next year.
If I could change one thing about fellowships at Merrimack College, it would be to increase the recognition by the campus culture, faculty, and staff of the work that our fellows do and the respect that they receive as students primarily and fellows secondarily.
I hope that one day institutions with grad fellows really can see and appreciate what we do for institutions and how much we want to give to our institutions. We're here to learn, and learning is key in being a professional. I will never be a master at my craft, and I'm always going to continue to learn. So I hope that one day all grad fellows get paid and all grad fellows completely get their tuition reimbursed.
I think part of the fellowship experience is for individuals to learn, to contribute, to feel like they're part of the team, integral, and not just taking, a role that will give them free tuition or a role that will have them do this project. Really feel part of the community. I think that's, and the work community, I think that's important.
Most students are here for only a year. It's a very difficult year. It's you're in a tornado and you touch down once in a while and then you're done all of a sudden.
It's exhausting. You have your classes in the evening and working all day. It's not only about finding time, because if you think about it as finding time, you'll never find it. It's about more so making time for yourself. Even if it's just 5 minutes to lay down on your office ground. I know I've done that. To just lay down on your office ground, clear your mind for 5 minutes, and then get right back up and doing that work. is so essential.
Although I'm not having the best experience, I feel like it's the best experience for me going forward. I've had to overcome so much. I've learned so much beyond the role that I've given. I've learned like how to grow and work with people and stuff like that. So I definitely feel like it's an advantage and it's going to help me in the future.
It's hard when you're going through it, but there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and when you look back on it, when you're outside of the situation, it's an overall kind of good experience for your life in general. Just learn as much as you can when you're here.
I have my thoughts and I wish that things were a certain way and I wish I was compensated better, but at the same time, I always remind myself that I've learned so much over the past year. It directly correlates to what I want to do in the future, and it's solidified for me that this is what I want to continue to do. So although things didn't go exactly how I planned out for it to be, I still benefited from this fellowship in so many different ways, and for that I'm thankful.